understand the economy, you have to understand human nature.
This podcast is powered by Acast.
How you doing there? Welcome to the podcast.
Peníze v dějinách lidstva. Příběh a tajemství nejmocnějšího vynálezu.
See that?
Just play that again.
Peníze v dějinách lidstva. Příběh a tajemství nejmocnějšího vynálezu.
I was looking at the writing and I was going to try and attempt to pronounce that myself. Not a chance. Do you know what that is?
Tell me.
That is...
Money in Human History. The story and secrets of the most powerful invention.
in Czech. In Czech.
That is the Czech version of the book. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Actually, your pronunciation is so
Isn't it
fantastic.
just perfect?
I was thinking I was talking to Milan Kundera there. Exactly.
But they've changed the title of the book.
They've changed the title. Well, I mean, the great thing is, John, the really good thing is, so the book is published in Czech, and I've got the first one. It's published in 17 languages now.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's really
That's
great.
really good.
So it'll be in Korean, in Chinese, and Japanese.
Kim's going to be reading
Kim's
it.
going to read it. We even sold the rights to Ukraine last week. Yeah, no, it's lovely.
But I'm looking at the cover here. They've changed the cover as well as the title, but it looks like some sort of Bible.
Well, it does. Well, you know, John, maybe it will be. You put your right hand on David McWilliams' book. You swear to God.
I do that every week.
Yeah, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. No, it is. It's a rather Renaissance-looking.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Cover.
I actually, when I saw it, I thought it was a version of Dante's Inferno. Actually,
Well, the interesting thing, well, as you know, there's a large chapter on Dante's Inferno.
Isn't there always?
And no, it's great. So that's in Czech. It's the language of Milan Kundera.
Yeah.
It's the language of Jaroslav Hasek.
Who are
Okay,
these? So
Kundera.
Who do they play for? Sporting.
Speaking of playing for, it's also the language of Antonin Panenka, and I'll tell you about him in a second.
Right.
But Kundera, when we were kids, John, The Unbearable Lightness of Being was the sort of book that lots and lots of Sudes used to read all around Dublin, right?
Yeah.
To exemplify their artistic sensibilities. It also helped that there was a movie made of it, and one of the women in it was an incredibly good-looking Swedish actress, from my memory. Okay?
Right.
Jaroslav Hasek, and that's another great Czech writer, wrote a book, if you're interested in Czech culture, called The Good Soldier Svek, which is a brilliant book. It's a piss take about a soldier in the Austrian-Hungarian army in the First World War. And he's so incompetent and he's so useless. But it's a pro-peace, anti-war book.
Right.
It's basically it's the Bible for Czech sarcasm, humor, because again, loads and loads of the Czech soldiers who fought in the First World War couldn't speak German. And the orders were given by the Austrians. They were in the Austrian army in German. And the Czech lads hadn't a clue what was going on. Yeah. And Svek is a really good character. In his real life, before he was a soldier, he was conscripted. Yeah. He was a particularly fine job. He was a dealer in second-hand dogs, which I quite like.
Right. Yes. Second-hand dogs.
And he used to go around collecting stray dogs and sell them. So it's also the language of Antonin Panenka, John.
Yeah, go on.
Now, Antonin Panenka, for me, is the great Czech hero because he came up with the Panenka penalty. Do you know that great penalty you take when the keeper dives to the left and you just chip it right in front of him?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen really ballsy players do that, right?
Messi does that.
Messi does the Pirlo, the really great ones.
Yeah.
But it comes from a Czech fella. This is why I've always loved Czech football.
Okay.
Czechoslovakia beat, can you imagine the final of the Euros? It's 2-2 between West Germany and Czechoslovakia.
What year?
1976. Google it, okay? Old school.
I was 10.
Old school. So was I, but I was into football then, right? Old school, right? So he comes up, he stands up, right? Imagine, final of the Euros.
Yeah.
Last penalty to win or to lose.
Right.
The Germans had just missed a penalty. A guy called Uwe Hoeneß, you might remember him.
I don't.
Okay, doesn't matter. So Sepp Meyer's in goal for the Germans. A man mounted, a huge keeper.
Yeah.
Brilliant keeper. Panenka comes up and the whole world is watching him. And he does that. He does the Panenka. The French called him a poet after that, right? Sepp Meyer looks at him, dives to the left, Panenka just chips it into the centre.
Beautiful.
And that's it to win the thing.
Beautiful.
Anyway, so I think, if we're talking about great Czech heroes, you have Milan Kundera, you have Hasek. But for me, Panenka's the man.
Right.
Panenka's the man. So yes, the book has been published in
So
Czech,
back to money.
Back to money.
And I also see that Nassim Taleb put out on Twitter, X, whatever, one of the books to read that everyone should read.
This is great. I mean, that's my week was made. You know, if you're going to get a recommendation, if a book is going to get a recommendation, you get it from the man who wrote Anti-Fragile, Skin in the Game, Fooled by Randomness. So anyway, yes, it's been a good week for money.
Yeah.
Speaking of money, John,
Yeah.
did you or have you ever heard of a crypto coin called Fartcoin?
No, Mac. I haven't.
So Fartcoin peaked
Is
this
that a
week.
thing?
This is a thing, right? I want to talk to you about memeonomics.
Yes.
Donald Trump, TikTok, memeonomics, Fartcoin, and the world that is changing in front of our eyes. This is a very important podcast. It might start with penalties in football and Fartcoin, but it's going to go somewhere, I think, quite dark, actually.
Well, I've been reading about the Trump coin, and I thought it was a piss take, actually, when I started reading about it, because the whole thing seems to be a piss take. It's taking advantage of his vulnerable fan base, as it were. You know, it's like selling merch at a gig, you know?
Well, it is selling merch at a gig.
Yeah.
But this is just the biggest gig in the world.
Yes. Yeah,
This
it is.
It is like...
I mean, you can imagine, like, after the week we've had in Irish politics and in the Dáil and stuff, you can imagine a Healy Ray coin, you know, or a meme sod of turf.
Yeah. Well, listen, look. Okay, so let's talk. We're going to talk about the Trump coin. We're going to talk about the stay of execution that Trump gave to TikTok and what that actually means.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Trump coin, tokens, TikTok, tech bros, all, you see what I did there? Lots of alliteration, right? All in the one
Very good,
episode to try and understand how value is being created, not just in America,
Yeah.
but all over the world. Now, a type of value, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Schumpeter, we're going to talk about real innovation, and we're going to talk about the world that is being presented, right? So the Trump coin we know, right? Just to give you a bit of background, it's launched.
And the Melania coin.
And the Melania coin. She waited for a while. She waited for 2 days.
Yeah.
So the Trump coin is launched and goes through the roof on the day of inauguration. At its height, the Trump coin probably created about $60 billion of wealth for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now just think, this is all notional stuff, making him one of the richest people in the world.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Melania, overnight,
yeah.
right? Overnight,
Out of nothing.
right? And that's what I want to talk about. It's the way in which the economy that Trump has cornered, a part of the economy, the attention economy, is changing the way we understand economics. So in the past, if you were to study macroeconomics, or you to study innovation, or the way in which wealth is created, you would study it usually from our old friend Schumpeter,
Yeah.
Schumpeterian idea. So basically what you'd have is you would grab people's attention with a new product
Yeah.
and you'd say, this is the bee's knees and it's better than the product that you're just using. So for example, in the car market, you know, Mercedes would advertise for a Mercedes and say it's better than a Renault, okay, of the same thing, or an Audi. Then once you've grabbed people's attention, you introduce the product itself and you sell the product. So a real thing. And with the revenue you get from that product, you innovate in the new product and you create an even better car.
Yeah.
right? Same
Always
goes-
iterating. Yeah.
Exactly. And you rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And that is basically the way in which innovation takes hold. So it's the elixir of human creativity and manufacturing prowess that creates the momentum forward, which is the background noise for our friend Schumpeter's notion of the creative destruction. And as of yet, I haven't read or studied a better description of how the world works, the capitalist world works.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so therefore, bad companies go bust, new companies arrive, and then the extreme Schumpeterian idea would be that the business cycle is good. So his idea is recessions are a cleansing process,
Yeah.
right? It's almost that they cleanse out the bad companies, they find out the bad companies. Remember last week we talked about macroeconomics being a great bullshit detector,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Same sort of idea, that a recession is only a reflection of a massive transition within the economy, which will lead to better, brighter, more creative stuff. So that's the Schumpeterian idea. But at the core of the Schumpeterian idea is what you would describe as kind of real innovation. something new, something good, something valuable is created, and that is value creation. So you can feel or at least experience or at least touch the value, right? And then, of course, advertising reinforces that because advertising creates value in our head. And this is where I think Schumpeter really understood the world in a way in which, let's say, the Marxists don't really understand. So value doesn't come from. So Marxism and leftism in general feels that value comes from what they call the labor theory of value, which is how many man hours goes into producing something. And that's the basis of most, well, the DNA of most left-wing thinking, right?
Yeah.
What Schumpeter's idea is that no, in actual value is created in your head. And a thing is worth whatever you decide it's worth. So you, for example, like music more than I do. So you might pay more to go to a gig, whereas I might pay more to go to a football match, right?
Yeah.
So that's the idea. But now we're into something different, right? There's something really different. This memeonomics, basically when memes become valuable. Why is this? Because we're moving into a thing called the attention economy. So we're moving from the real economy, which uses attention to create the advertising, which adds value, to attention, where the attention in itself is the thing of value.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, what that leads to is these extraordinary things like Trumpcoin. And Trumpcoin, like all these other coins, is basically a 3-stage process of value. And this is how some people will have lost a lot of money this week.
But something like Bitcoin, you know, we've talked about its value or not, but at least it has some sort of utility. Whereas
I don't think it does.
Whereas
You know,
the Trump meme has no utility.
But that's
at
why,
all.
I don't know if you've noticed, the Bitcoiners are all going mad.
Exactly. Yeah, they're all up in
the Trump coin has the potential to shine the light of clarity onto all the other cryptos, which is they're all just a promise based on a narrative, a story, right? So let's get back to this idea. So we'll come right back onto the cryptos because we want to talk about money.
Yeah.
So when Fartcoin and Trumpcoin are being
it's the ultimate bubble.
marketed as money, we've got to go back to the book and talk about money and where it comes from, right? So just keep Fartcoin in your head because I know you like that one. I knew you'd like that.
Who started
it's
that?
our sort of scatological, sort of undergraduate, not even undergraduate, primary school sense of humor, right? Okay. We are now back.
Heinz Beans Fartcoin.
Yeah, we are now back in 6th class in national school, right? Anyway, so
I love a good fart joke.
You do. Aside, right? So the stage of the attention economy, and this is crucial to understand what's going on now, which is why podcasting, the tech bros, Trump, all these new ways of looking and creating value, right? So the key thing is you hype it up, the product, whatever it happens to be, the token, right? It's only a meme. It doesn't exist. It's a meme. You hype it up. That generates within the group of people who are listening to you a FOMO, a fear of missing out, which means they get on the bandwagon. And once they get on the bandwagon, so the first phase is hype, second phase is FOMO, and the third phase is the rug pull. You pull the rug from under them by selling them out, right? Yeah. Now, if you really want a really interesting exposition of this, it was a very brilliant Substack this week. There were 2 brilliant Substack this week. One is the one we're going to talk about at length, and the other one is we're going to talk about a little bit less, but we're definitely going to talk about it. One is from Kyla Scanlon.
Yeah.
She's a very brilliant economist. We're hoping to have her over at Kilconomics next year. Well, this year in November, and I hope to have her on the show, right? She's written a very good Substack all about this. And the second Substack is written by our researcher, Eliza.
Eliza, yeah.
Yeah, Elizanomics. Check it out. An amazing piece of writing this week on why social media has gone from woke to MAGA in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. It's all related to this. So we're going to come back to that in a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So Elizanomics, just Google it, check it out. It's a brilliant Substack. She's the one who actually makes John and I sound vaguely clever. So let us get back to the Kyla Scanlon Substack, which is very, very well put together. So her basic idea is the mechanics of this is you hype, you create FOMO, you pull the rug, right? You sell on. And that is exactly the opposite of the Schumpeterian world. Because the Schumpeterian world is you don't pull the rug.
Yes.
You create the hype, you create the product, you create innovation, and on you go.
But the product
the Trump world is the meme world.
But the product in the Schumpeterian world is usually something very tangible and usable and, has some intrinsic value in itself, regardless of what value you or I would put on it. But in this, it's nothing. It's in the ether.
Well, what you do is, it's in the ether. You create attention, right? You capture people's attention, and then you convert that attention directly into a token.
Yeah.
And that token has value, and the value is based on what the last person who bought it thinks it's based on, right? Now, just keep that idea in your head, because this is a very new idea, which is as old as the hills, but it's new because of the alliance of the President of America, the tech bros behind him, Wall Street behind him. Those three factors make a massive difference to what could be going on. There is an argument to say that this now, the speed at which wealth is created, the scale at which wealth is created. So in 36 hours, Donald Trump increased his own personal wealth on paper by 60 billion.
But for him to convert that into hardcore cash, as it were, he'd have to offload
or leverage it up.
Yeah.
And somebody would borrow and lend against that.
But, you said that Wall Street were kind of behind this as well. The Wall Street people aren't that dumb.
They're not that clever either. I mean, Wall Street has brought you the 1929 crash. This is Wall Street. What if Wall Street brought you the 1929 crash, the savings and loans, the dot-com? They are unbelievably susceptible to a bubble, not least because they can make money, because they can pull the rug. It's the rug pulling. They basically
then it's all about timing when you pull the rug.
Their clients with stuff. So if you think about it right now, what's happening, and this is the difference with social media, with the attention economy, with all this sort of stuff, right? The speed at which wealth is created has changed. So it's dramatically amplified, the speed, right? The scale at which it has changed. The scale has changed because it's international.
Yeah.
So there's no longer physical boundaries, right? The source has changed because the source is now the president of the United States, right? Okay. And the integration of all these has changed because if you own the platforms, or your mates do, okay, number one, Truth Social, X, Facebook.
Yeah.
What are they all? They're platforms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, you own the platform. Number two, you own the narrative. You're the person who tells the story. Number three, you have executive power because you're the president.
Yeah.
And number four, because all the tech bros have lined up behind you, you have all the money in the world. You are, as my mother would say, my grandmother would say, you are as rich as Croesus.
Yeah.
Croesus, as we know, was the king of the Lydians, who we know were the first people to mint gold. So this is what we're talking about.
That's all in the book, by the way.
That's all in, yes, exactly, in chapter. So think about that ability to create money out of nothing.
Yeah.
So this is, I'm just saying, look at the world. This is really, really big, what's going on here.
Okay, but what does this do to the real economy, in inverted commas, and more importantly, the dollar?
So let's come back to all that in a second. I just want to drop in just to spice the dish a little bit more.
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yes.
So Trump granted TikTok a stay of execution last week. He said, I'm going to give you 6 months. Now, what is that 6 months for? The Chinese don't want to sell.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to sell. It's not just the technology. They don't want to be seen to be playing the game of the Americans, which is the Americans have created a money can buy you everything narrative, which is why when Trump talks about Greenland, he says the Danes, they need the money. The Europeans, they need the money. Like it is. I didn't realize when I wrote this book about money that it would become so absolutely essential so quickly.
Yeah.
So the Americans, or this administration, is a transactional administration.
Yeah. It was first time round as well.
But this time it's unbound.
Yes.
This time it's unbound.
Absolutely.
And there's no resistance. You know, Zuckerberg was against Trump Musk was against Trump originally. Think about it. All these guys have now lined up in front of him. The richest men in the world have lined up in front of Trump, as you saw at the inauguration.
Yeah.
Right? So think about TikTok. Trump says America should buy 50% of TikTok, right? An American entity.
Yeah.
What
Nationalize it.
What American entity is highly likely to buy it? Something associated with Donald Trump.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
right? With what money? With the money he made from the Trump coin.
Yeah.
And he does an equity swap. So the underlying, if you think about how he might be able to do this, right, with the right financial engineering,
Yeah.
he may well be able to engineer a situation where his wealth or those around him buys TikTok using some of the Trump/Fartcoin. Now think about this, right?
It's ridiculous when you actually.
It's ridiculous, but if you go through the various iterations of the trade, in the same way as you can buy stuff with Bitcoin. Why? If you really think hard about it.
Yeah.
Because the value that you're giving Bitcoin is the value the last guy who bought it is.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
there's no other value except it's what we call the greater fool theory in economics, right? Why do you think Trump is going hell for leather saying we're going to become the crypto capital? Because he's printing the crypto.
Yeah.
He's issuing the tokens.
He's
right?
become his own kind of Fed.
So
Fed of cryptos.
It's the Fedization of the Donald Trump administration through crypto. This is exactly what is happening, right? Now imagine he buys or gets to buy TikTok. So now he owns or controls or can lean on Facebook, which is the biggest platform in the world. Also owns Instagram, also owns WhatsApp. Twitter, X is in his pocket because Musk is in his pocket.
He has his own Truth Social.
Truth Social, which is a small version, but still it's probably growing. And TikTok. So he owns all the platforms, or he can use all the platforms. And of course, the free speech agenda, if you want to be conspiratorial about it, allows them to say anything they want on these platforms.
Yeah.
Now
but that's also their sales pitch as well to the general public. This is the only way you can have your proper, full freedom of speech.
Exactly.
So it's part of the Constitution.
So we can tell you Fartcoin is worth something.
Yeah.
It's the same idea, right? And people like David McWilliams who stand up and say, hold on a second, this is nonsense. You just rain on them. You get bots to attack them. Thousands and thousands of bots to attack people like me or whoever happens to be, undermines your credibility and you're gone, right? So just think about this world. This is what I would call late stage America.
Right, okay.
So you have this extraordinary alliance of Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and Wall Street. And I'll put that together, right?
Yeah.
Hollywood is the narrative.
Yeah.
It's the story. It's the story Americans tell themselves, right? So, you know, the Cowboys and Indians, that was basically to make a story of the West that was palatable to America.
Yeah.
So Hollywood tells the story. It's always been the great scriptwriter. The great scriptwriter of America has always been Hollywood. And that's why we kind of love it, because we absorb that culture because they are very, very good at it, right? That's the first thing. The platform is owned by Silicon Valley. That is owned by Donald.
Yeah.
Or at least is Donald adjacent.
Yes. Yeah.
And the leverage comes from Wall Street. Because Wall Street will do anything that basically makes money. And if you're saying, you know what, you can make money in the attention economy. And then you create a whole new economic model. Now, the whole new economic model is based on, you have the market power.
Yeah.
You have the token wealth from the coins. And not only do you own the narrative, but because you're the president, you own the regulation.
Yeah.
Now, take all this together, and what you're looking at is the ultimate transaction of power, money, and geostrategic potency in the world. And it's all coming together.
So let's come back to what it means for, as I said earlier, the real economy and the power of the dollar. Because it feels a little bit like it's kind of America's eating itself.
You're absolutely right. So let's pick that up, because it is completely self-defeating only if you believe in the people versus the elite.
Yeah.
If you're a member of the elite, and I'm talking this new elite, this is the greatest shakedown in financial history. So let's talk about it after the break.
Yeah. So, Mac, we have Fartcoin, we have Trump memes, Melania memes, we have
Memonomics.
the whole shebang. And on the outside looking in, this looks like just a gigantic bubble of nonsense.
Yeah.
But there is real money involved here. And I'm curious as to what the impact of this is going to be on the American dollar and the real economy, and how it's going to ripple out across the world.
I think this is a crucial question. Now, obviously, if you read a very good book called Money, The Story of Humanity, or as it was called in Czech,
Peníze v dějinách lidstva. Příběh a tajemství nejmocnějšího vynálezu.
Yeah, that one. Yeah,
that one. But it talks about, this is why it's essential to learn economics. Because if you don't learn economics and actually read about it and read the history of it and understand how the mechanisms work, you get sucked into this nonsense.
But there's Trump saying, "I love the uneducated,"
And I love crypto, and I love I know what
ripping
you mean.
people off.
Yeah, ripping people off. So basically, what you have is
Grifter.
you've political power leading to a change in the market, to a tension. So you're not creating a product; you're creating this notion of you're living rent-free in people's heads.
Yeah.
Living rent-free in people's heads means you can sell them something that at the moment is a token. Who knows what it's going to be in 6 months' time?
Well, the new presidency is a bit of a novelty, and like all novelties, it kind of peters out a little
It
bit.
peters out, right? But right at the moment, so you create the token that creates wealth. The thing about wealth is wealth creates bubbles because wealth creates FOMO. People say, oh my God, I want to be in it. And we always know the greatest converts to people in a bubble are people who are already in the bubble.
Yeah.
Because they need to proselytize. They need to actually convince everybody else and themselves that they're right.
Yeah.
Okay?
Justify themselves.
Justify themselves. That means more power, which means more control over the sheep. Meh. Right? The sheep. But we're talking hundreds of millions. Sheeple, exactly. And then you rinse and you repeat and you rinse and you repeat. And all the time what you're doing is you are concentrating wealth and power in the hands and in the interests of a tiny, tiny minority of people who you largely saw at the inauguration.
Yeah. I
mean, that is a snapshot of an oligarchy, the likes of which we haven't seen. Now, the old oligarchies, like years ago, and this is about back to your production idea, the real economy. If you think about the first period of American history when oligarchs influenced hugely the American political and economic backdrop.
With the Rockefellers and those
exactly.
kind of guys. Yeah.
Carnegie, Rockefeller, those guys, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is very opposite and to the point of your question. What were they creating? They were creating real things.
Yeah.
So basically, they were creating railroads. They were creating the energy grid. Edison was creating the electricity grid. Think about all these people, right? They were bringing huge amounts of agricultural products from the Midwest to New York and then to Europe. They were creating stuff of real value that would have a long-term impact on the productive capacity of the United States.
Yeah.
What are these guys bringing? They're bringing attention. Attention, you can't eat attention. You can't travel from A to B with attention. So the difference between the real economy and what I would describe as this token economy that is being not only created, but eulogized, and you can see how it makes complete sense if you're on the inner circle, is you undermine, like all things, really good investment in really proper, productive, creative, innovative stuff. That gets crowded out by this shitehawkery.
Yeah.
This is what it is. And a huge amount of economic resources, i.e. money, gets sucked into this vortex of the attention economy and, of course, doesn't go into the real economy because memes are easy. If you can create $60 billion of value in 36 hours, Why would you bother worrying about building a new railway?
Yeah.
Or building a new road?
Yeah.
Or doing all the things that would actually make America great again?
Exactly.
You see?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's one thing. Second question is on the dollar. So the dollar is the fascinating thing. So I've always maintained what gives America its real power is its financial power, best articulated through the dollar, and its cultural power. Rock and roll, Coca-Cola, all these old American things.
Yeah.
You know, hip-hop, whatever, you know. If you look at most trends that exist in the world, whether we like it or not, they start in the United States. The United States is the epicenter of Western culture. Now, French people mightn't like this.
Yeah.
Italians mightn't like
Well, it has been for the last while anyway.
it. Is right now. You can argue that Britain was, 100 years ago,
Yeah.
right? In literature, in art, in music, Dickens, harking back to Shakespeare, all that sort of stuff,
Yeah,
right? It
yeah.
was regarded as the cradle of the 20th century Western culture. Late 20th century, post Second World War, and into the 21st century, America is the cradle of Western culture. So it does create this amazing soft power, which is why you get white kids from Fox Rock thinking they're black homies walking around, right? Why is that?
Yes.
Because they're importing American culture, you know?
Yeah.
With their trousers around their arse. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is America has that soft power, that cultural power. It also has the power of the dollar. It also has what I would call this reinvention, this entrepreneurial spirit, which is real, which is absolutely real. You know, if you meet Americans, for example, you meet them to talk about the podcast. Why don't you do 10 of them?
Yeah.
Because that's their way. That's the American way. It's like scale, it's big, whatever. And that I find very attractive. It's that risk taking. You can do it. Let's go. As the Americans say, big or go home.
Yeah.
Paddies usually just go home. It's like, all right.
Go to the pub.
Exactly.
Go big or go for a pint.
Yeah, exactly. The dollar is actually crucial to all this, right? What Trump either doesn't realize or is unwilling to accept, that every time you introduce these sort of coins, these memes, these crypto-y adjacent things, because there's some bits of crypto, have got interesting things going on, right? What you're doing is you are saying that the real currency of the country, the dollar, is not as good as this stuff I am introducing. Now that's intellectualizing a bit. Maybe he's actually saying, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to make money out of this, right?
So it's just
and I'm going to
selfish.
sell it in dollars to somebody else. And I want dollars for it. So the foundational currency is still the dollar. But Trump wants a weak dollar. That's his big obsession.
Why?
He wants a weak dollar because he feels the dollar is too expensive in the world. He's obsessed with trade surpluses and deficits. This is very strange, but that's his obsession. And so he's having to go with the Canadians because the Canadians operate a massive trade surplus with the Americans. The reason they operate a massive trade surplus is the Canadians give them energy.
Yeah.
Give them electricity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though he talks about America being the greatest producer of this, that, and the other, and it is. I mean, the extraordinary thing is he introduced an emergency legislation saying there's energy emergency in America. There isn't.
Yeah.
There has never been maybe a better time energy-wise in America because they have ramped up green energy, they've ramped up oil, they have gas, they have everything. But in his head.
Yeah.
So one of his things is, the reason we can't compete is the dollar is too strong. So what we'll do is we'll have the dollar a little bit weaker and then we can compete with China. And if we can't have a weaker dollar, we will put tariffs on them, which by extension will make the dollar feel weaker because the tariffs will make foreign produce more expensive, which is the real world equivalent of a falling dollar, right? So he wants a weak dollar, but he doesn't want a too weakened dollar.
Yeah.
Because the dollar is what gives the Americans their power.
But exactly. See, it's this kind of contradiction that I'm trying to get my head around. Like, what would Jay Powell be saying about all of this?
He's already on messages say that he knows more about interest rates than Jay Powell.
Right. Okay.
I know about interest rates. I know them very good.
Yeah. Nobody knows more about it.
No,
than I
nobody
do.
knows more about interest rates than me.
Many people say that.
Yeah. So, but to come back to it, and we should maybe conclude the podcast here, that what we're seeing is a concentration of power, money, influence, and attention that the world has never, ever, ever seen.
Mhm.
Number one. Number two, we're seeing a president use executive orders to get his own way, to articulate and execute his own policy. Does that mean that he will use executive orders to enrich himself, to enrich those around him? I have a sense that Trump not only wants to be the most powerful man in the world, but he wants to be the richest man in the world.
Well, that's how he measures it.
Yeah, so
in his
everything's
own
about
head.
money.
Yeah,
So he's got
yeah.
this Midas complex,
Yeah.
right? But the fascinating thing about Trump is he's making us think. We are having podcasts now that we wouldn't have under Biden. He's making us think about money, about economics, about finance, about market share, about Schumpeterianism, about where the world is going.
Yeah.
You know, there is a kind of a penny drop moment that people are saying, oh, okay, so if I put that together, this extraordinary concentration of power is being driven by an economy which is an attention economy, which has at its roots a change in the way in which we absorb information, which is a function of social media, which is owned by oligarchs who are in the pocket of the president. And I think a lot of us are beginning to actually join up the dots. So in a way, bizarrely, Trump is making us think. Trump University.
Hey.
There you go. We'll talk to you on Thursday.